help me welcome my friend, Becky LeBlanc.
I'm short, so I'm going to be up high. Very good. Good morning. Welcome to the Kaleidoscopic workshop for continuing education as teachers. I hope that you all are looking forward to our workshop. Today we are going to be covering lots of information about how to access your student, how to understand if a student is just shutting down and not trying. And I'm going to give you tools and skills that you can use in your classroom to help you reach your students. To get there, the first thing we need to do is an exercise. I had each of you pick a pit. Did everybody pick a pit? Mm-hmm. Please don't eat it. I've already had the honor of doing the eating of the good part. Please be assured that I did wash them well and sanitize them before I put them in the bowl to offer to you. Okay, so everybody has their pit. Yes? All right. Now then, it doesn't matter to me if you selected a pit or if you did not select a pit. The choice is not important. What is important is the reason behind you made the selection you did. Why did you pick the pit you picked? The beginning exercise is going to be 15 seconds. We're going to take our pit. Everyone take your pit. Does everyone have their pit available? Very good. And if you picked more than one pit, go ahead and pick up all your pits. All right. I would like you to take your pits or non-pit. If you didn't have a pit, just take your empty hand and pretend. And put whatever into the other hand, into the palm, and close your hand tightly, please. Okay, now, I'm going to give you 15 seconds. We're going to close our eyes, and I want you to think hard about why did you pick it? Why did you make this selection? Let's close our eyes, and the 15 seconds begins now. Okay, you can open your eyes now. Now that you've all had a bit of a moment to contemplate what was the rationale behind you selecting your pit, I'm going to do a brief sort of kind of table topics event where you're going to have 30 seconds to stand up and tell us why you selected your pit. I would like you to fill up the 30 seconds if you can. I think that the challenge is very important in the process of learning about your brain and how you think as an individual. So the first person I would like to call on is Jose.
Jose Antonio.
Jose Antonio, I apologize.
Yes.
So you can go wherever. I'm just standing up there is good. So I'm going to set a timer. When the timer goes beep, 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 go ahead and finish your thought, but then make sure that you're wrapping it up, okay? All right, ready?
First, I picked this pit because first I was told that I need one. Secondly, because I had three choices, and from the three choices, the one in the middle looks like it was not that big, and the other one was too small, so I decided to get into the middle one. And also, when I see the form, I was thinking, well, looks like it's already sure for someone else, and they said, well, that's okay. So that's why I decided to get this one, and also because I like the form.
Very good, thank you so much, Jose. All right, now we have one opinion, one set of ideas as to how to pick a pit. So the next person I would like to select is Christina. Christina.
The reason why I picked this particular pit was, one, it was the biggest one and I could see it. Two, it has ridges. and crevices in the actual pit. And I think that it kind of represents who I am. There are some edges that are a little rougher. There are some folds that have some deep meaning and some deep root within it. And that's why I picked it.
Very good. Thank you so much. Okay, Jennifer, I'd like you to go next.
I picked my pit because I was offered another one, and this one was bigger. So go big or go home. I like the bigger things, shinier things, so that's why I picked it. And then I didn't realize that it was actually a peach pit that someone had said. So I like peaches. And that's why I picked the seed that I picked.
Thank you very much. Right on. Good job. Okay, and the last person I would like to select is Kim. Kim, what did you pick?
I did not pick a pit. I did not pick a pit. Because you told me not to pick a pit, but no, if I had
enough reason.
because I was told not to pick a pit because somebody needed to not have a pit in order for you to be effective in what you're presenting, and therefore I picked a pit to help you succeed. If I had picked a pit, if I had not picked a pit and had a different reason, it would be maybe sanitary. I'm not sure where these came from. Are they clean? And that is why I do not have a pit.
Very good. And your second answer was what I was looking for was the ew. That's been near or in someone's mouth. I assure you that all of the pits have been washed in very hot soapy water several times and dried on paper towels before they went into the bowl for your selection. Okay, so what does this have to do with anything? Well, it has to do with value. It has to do with the value we place on things that we see and encounter. The value of the pit is nothing. What usually happens to the pit when we finish eating the part that we enjoy? We eat the olive and we put the pit in the garbage. We eat the plum or the apricot, which are middle-sized ones, and we put the pit into the garbage. We eat a peach and we put the pit into the garbage. The value is not in the pit itself. It's what the pit contains. If an arborist or someone who ran a farm where they produced peaches, plums, or olives would find great value in the pit. Because if that person were to dig a hole in the ground and very carefully plant the pit into the dirt, cover it up with dirt, and water it, and protect the area from tilling, mowing, and weed whackers, and was very patient for the water, the sun, and the dirt to take their effect on the pit would release its magic. The life within is the seed. And from the seed would come one day a tiny little sprout that would push its way through the hard dirt and raise up with two beautiful leaves, which would then, if protected and continued to be nurtured, grow into a beautiful tree, which in turn would again give us more fruit to eat, with more pits, which contains the magic of life. Now, what does this have to do with education? I stand before you to say it has everything to do with education. And I want you to take your pits and I want you to put them during the workshop where you will bump it, see it, touch it, and feel it throughout the workshop. To remind you that the outside is only the outside. That what's inside is magic, is life. So when we're walking around through our lives, we encounter many, many people. We encounter many things where we have to make choices and decisions, and we have to do that spontaneously. And how do we do that? We do that in two parts of our brain. One part is the cerebral cortex, I got it out, which is our thought process, our analytical process part of our brain, and the other is the limbic brain. And when we're caught by surprise or put under stress, the cerebral cortex turns off and the limbic brain turns over. In his book called Leading Out Loud, Terry Pierce refers to that action as the limbic hijack. Think about a hijack. You're doing something that you don't want to do. You're being forced into it. When we have a limbic hijack, our brain turns off. The limbic brain turns on, and in a microscopic second, it makes decisions and analysis based on what you've already experienced and all the things you've already been told, and it gives you the right answer. Or is it the right answer? Is there a right answer as to which pit you selected? Does one pit selection make you better than someone who picked the other selection? No. The answer is no. If you picked 3 pits because you wanted one of each, does that make you better than people who picked none? No. It just means that your selection is different, based on different scenarios, different information, and different experiences. In speaking to some of the people who selected their pits, 2 people actually managed to select a pit from the fruit that they actually enjoy. What is the limbic hijack? You've seen that pit many times and had pleasure from the pit, therefore your brain directed you to that pit without you even knowing it. That was some information that I was very surprised to get this morning. Thank you for sharing. Now, what does that have to do with our students? What does that have to do with our students? Christina nailed it. This pit has lots of wrinkles and holes in it. And we have students sitting in our classrooms that have wrinkles and holes all over them. We have some kids who are angry and frustrated, and we have some kids that are bored. We have some kids that have been labeled with ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. How many of you have ever heard of all those things? Some of them have Asperger's syndrome, autism. And what are we told? Oh, just get them by, push them on through. No. We need to be willing to open ourselves up so we can see what is within. If we are unwilling to open ourselves, then we'll never see what is within. Now, why bother? That is the title of my speech. Why bother? Why should I bother? I have 35 students in my classroom already, and I have this one kid over here who's sitting there picking his nose and pulling his hair out. I don't have time to deal with that one. I have to deal with the 35. I get that. I get that. We have to make choices, and we have to go with what's easier to deal with. But the one is being left behind. And that one is no longer one. In our society, it's almost half of them. That's scary. We have to change as a society how we think and look at each other. And the only way the system is going to change is if our brains change and we quit letting our limbic brain hijack us into the same thing humanity has been doing for thousands of years and start doing things differently. That is what we need to change. That's why the pit. I want you to keep your pits so that you can be reminded, because every one of us has to work on this. Every single human being has to work on their limbic hijack to where they judge other people and other things without knowing it. Now, why should we bother? Let me give you some reasons why we should bother. Now, I might get a little bit irritated with this because I've been knowing about this for many years. I'm not sure how you're going to react to this. How about in New York City, 2 young gentlemen graduated high school and they couldn't read, write, or math? So they sued the state of New York and won. Why should they have sat for 12 years in school and been uneducated at the other end? Well, the first hijack is because they were lazy, right? How many of you thought that? None of you. Very good. How about the parents didn't pay attention? The teachers weren't good enough. The curriculum wasn't taught right. No, it's all of it. Okay? So a lady by the name of Beth Fertig wrote a book called Why Can't You Teach Me to Read? Based on these 2 boys' stories. And in her research, she discovered that 20% of American adults may be functionally illiterate or below. Okay, I would remove the words maybe, but that's her quote, maybe. And you can look that up on www.npr.org, template story, and then if you want, you can come look at my thing. Another one. The title of this article is called Crisis Point. The State of Illiteracy in the United States of America, March 15, 2018. More than 30 million American adults in the United States cannot read, write, or cipher mathematics above the 3rd grade level. Are you starting to get a little bit nervous? Yeah. I hope so. That is the second one. The next one is from the Huffington Post literacy data. 85% of all juveniles appearing in court before a judge are functionally illiterate or below. Now we start having some dollar signs kick in. Are you starting to feel it? Functionally illiterate or below means that you are reading below the 5th grade. Below the 5th grade. Next, let's talk about adult prisoners. 75% of all adult inmates are functionally illiterate or below. When released from prison, if you take 100 prisoners, 70 of them will return to prison if we don't educate them. But it has been proven and statistically shown that if we educate those people to the state of literacy, only 16 are going to go back. Now, let's look at that in dollar signs. The cost of one prisoner is $31,000 to $60,000 per year, depending upon the prison and the state, and upwards. So if we have 70 go back, if we keep them stupid, or 16 go back if we educate them, how many tax dollars are we saving? When released, only 16 go back. Does that impact you? Is it starting to matter now whether or not we educate every single student? It doesn't matter if they have ADD or ADHD. Then we as adults, we as the society leaders need to stop and take the time to educate them. The cost is going to go up in the beginning, but what are we going to save in 20 years? What will be the fruits of our actions? Think about the tree. It takes 20 to 30 years for a tree to produce its fruit. But we're willing to wait for a tree. Are we willing to wait for our children? Are we willing to work that little extra, pay that little extra up front to educate our teachers so that they can do better jobs of accessing their students, I think that we will benefit. Let's look now at what happens to the disabled students. You know, we have to look at that too. We not only have students with minor disabilities like ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, we have students who have profound issues. We have students who have issues like autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, and God knows how many more that we could list out. We could probably spend the next 2 hours listing all their ailments and problems. What happens to these beautiful children when they become adults? Did you know that all the assistance, all care and education opportunities for these children and their parents ends when they turn 20? It like turns off like a light switch. They're done. Society doesn't care anymore. How many people are walking the streets right now because their parents died and there's no one there to take care of them? It breaks my heart that we're not educating. But if we could take these people and teach them to read and write and become functionally part of our society, if we could stop looking at their brokenness and bring them into our fold, they could become productive citizens. What is in-home care cost a parent? In-home care costs $14 to $27 an hour on the low end. You're looking at $5, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're looking at $7,500 a year on the lowest end, and $32,500 a year out of pocket for the parents on the high end. Going up. Going up. Think of the cost when a parent has a disabled child. They're paying sometimes $2 to $3 million in care before the child even reaches 20. But if we educate that child and teach the child to speak, we can protect the child from being molested, from being abused, because then they can speak up for themselves. Or they could even go to work as a cashier or as a stocker in a store and start helping to earn their keep. What is the cost of in-house care? If we have to institutionalize these children, $65,000 to $120,000 and up. On the governmental website, governing.com, the census data for 2014 would open. I'm not computerly literate. I don't know why I couldn't open up the 15 or 16, but it wouldn't let me open it. In 2014, Texas spends $9,000 per child on education. $9,000 sounds like a lot of money. We think, oh, that's the in-class stuff. No, that pays for the teacher, the administrator, the building, the janitors, the secretaries to pay for the pencils, the books, and whatever else it is that they do. $9,000 per child. In the state of New York, where they had the 2 children who sued the state, they paid $22,000 per person. So we cannot look at the dollars invested into the school system and say this is a better school system than that. No. My words are, it's an uppitier system than that, but it's not doing its job if we still have students that are exiting 12 years later illiterate. That's unacceptable. Now, why is it unacceptable, and why am I standing here saying that we can do something about it? Well, we all know someone. We all know someone who was profoundly impaired because she became very famous. How many of you know Helen Keller? How many of you know of Helen Keller? How many of you know the name of her teacher? Only one person knows the name of her teacher. It wasn't Helen Keller who was the miracle. It was her teacher. When I was young, I got to watch The Miracle Worker with Patty Duke playing the part of Helen Keller. Helen wasn't a nice girl. What kind of a child would you have described Helen as when she started having Miss Anne Sullivan come and work with her? A monster? A nightmare? A spoiled brat? Perhaps. Those are words that we use when we're in our limbic brain, judging and assuming and making assumptions when a child is out of control. But Helen was born normal. Helen at age 18 months could talk, and she was potty trained. She got sick. Terribly, terribly sick. In fact, the doctors back then didn't even have a name for the disease. But if you go online and you start researching Helen Keller, you'll find out that even today, doctors want to know what made her sick. They're guessing 2 diseases. Scarlet fever, meningitis. Does it matter? Does it matter what made her ill? No. What matters is that that illness took her sight and her hearing. And when she came round, her parents were elated. Oh, our child survived this horrible disease. Just to be crushed to find out that she couldn't see and she could no longer hear. What would any parent do? First, you'd fall down and cry, and then you'd put a protective armor around your child and start looking for answers. Her parents looked and looked and looked for answers. There was no hope to restore her hearing or her seeing. But what they found was a finger that pointed to a school where individuals were learning how to teach people sign language. And in that school, there was a very special teacher, and her name was Anne Sullivan. Without Anne, and Anne's determination, and Anne's willingness to be slugged, kicked, bit, have forks, plates, and chairs hurled at her. If Anne would not have had the patience to endure that, if she had not had the strength to look inside that pit and find the life within, we all would have missed out on the beautiful Helen Keller. She turned into a beautiful poet. She traveled the world talking. She's world renowned now, but she's blind and deaf. How many of the students are in your class that are sitting in the corner pouting with their defenses up because things aren't working up in their brain enough for them to be able to learn to read and write? And how many of you would like to be Anne Sullivan? Since the day I watched that movie, I wanted to be like Anne Sullivan. In my own way, I suppose I am. But I'm only reaching a few students. We need more Anne Sullivans. We need more teachers to be willing to stand up and say, we cannot let that child flounder one more minute. We must stop and take the time to find out, how do we find the magic? How do we open his or her door? As we go through this workshop throughout the day, I'm going to teach you physical signs that you can watch for in your students. Posturing, certain behaviors that students use as protective armor to keep from being harassed and punished for something they cannot do. I have had many a child sit in my classroom and say, I choose what I'm going to get punished for. I'd rather get punished for throwing the chair across the room than get punished because I can't read. Whose problem is it? Why should we bother? Why bother to put out that extra effort and energy? Well, we need to bother because it's going to save society in the long run. Now, from my perspective, those numbers are really conservative. I would estimate that we're more at 50% of our adult population being illiterate. That means that they're reading at the 5th grade or below and doing math less. If If you see some adult counting on their fingers, I want to just throw up because they're uneducated. We don't need to be counting on our fingers, we should be counting in our head. When I see a cashier hold their pencil incorrectly, or give me the wrong change, or go to the bank and they don't even know how to count the money that I'm depositing and they do it incorrectly, it's scary. And we wonder as business owners, why are we having difficulty finding employees? We don't think it's our problem that the children are uneducated. In the state of Texas, the first student that I worked with when I moved here was an 18-year-old boy. Senior in high school, had never been in special ed and had not repeated a grade, reading at the second grade level, in line for his high school diploma. His grandfather brought him to me. I got him reading up very close to the 5th grade level, and he received his high school diploma. We worked so hard and diligently on his reading, I didn't ever touch his math. He's now a high school graduate holding a diploma who can't add or subtract. What kind of job is he going to be able to get? And if he gets it, how long is he going to hold it? He's reading below 5th grade level. Had I not worked with him, he would still be at the 2nd grade level. That's Texas. That covers our entire country. And I would like to share with you one of the students that I work with. I started working with Jacob when he was 9 years old. His mother and his tutor brought him to me. When he walked into my house in Louisiana, I was a little bit surprised. He had his 2 little fingers sticking out with his hands resting upon his chest. His head was cocked to the left and his eyes fixed and staring up to the right. He was on his tiptoes and he staggered into my office, bumping into me and into the wall, not paying attention to where he was going. He did not know the alphabet, he could not count to 10. Our society tells us, oh, if a child is past the age of 7, they can't learn the alphabet. I could use 2 words to answer to that, but they would be inappropriate to speak right now. Jacob came to me not knowing the alphabet and having no idea what the digits were or what their names were. He couldn't count to 10, and he couldn't find the chair. I said, well, Jacob, come in and sit down. And his mother grabbed him by the arm, pushed him towards the chair, and said, here, Jacob, sit. And pushed him down into the chair. I have to say, my limbic brain got hijacked pretty quick. Oh my goodness. Where do I start? Well, I just remembered Helen. And I said, okay, this is my chance to be in. And I accepted him. His tutor came one of the 3 days a week and sat and observed the class. His mother wanted the tutor there so she could follow through and do some support work on the days that I'm not there. They drove 1 hour and 45 minutes one way for my service. The first day I went to introduce Jacob to the phonograms cards, which is our phonics, the sounds that we need to make. I introduced him to the first 3 consonants. B, D, K, S. That's B, D, and C. So I just sat on the floor and I showed him the B and I said, B, B, look Jacob, B. When we say B, we make a line with our mouth and open it. B. Guess what? Later I'm going to teach him. You start with the line and then make the round part. B. D, D. We start with the round part and then make the line. D. Now we just stopped dyslexia. There you go. All right. I was sitting on the floor doing B, D, K, S, and making him repeat it. His tutor was sitting in the chair behind, and she goes, and I just looked at her and said, can't do what? And she said, that's too hard. And I said, today, yeah, but he'll get it. went home with the parent and told the parent that that was too hard, that I was teaching him too hard of stuff and I needed to quit. So the parent came to the next class and said, do not work on phonics with him. I want you just to do the physical visual coordination so that he can start learning. I'm like, okay. Well, I didn't teach the phonics any day that Ada was there. And the other day I did. And guess what? He started having spelling words come home from school like bad and bed and rub and 3-letter words, and his mom was freaking out. And then one day she walked in, and this was like after 2 years, she walked in and his mother was freaking out. She said, oh, I don't know what this special ed teacher's thinking. We're going from 3-letter words to think and thing and string. And I said, oh, Maureen, go. It'll be fine. You'll read them when you come back. And guess what? When she came back, he could read every one of his spelling words and tell his mother what they were. She said, well, when did he learn that? I said, Maureen, I've been teaching him to read since the day he brought it. That's what you paid me to do, correct? Yes. Guess where Jacob is now, 10 years later? He can read at a 5th grade plus level and respond to questions appropriately. He can write a sentence in cursive. He has written essays in cursive. And I can write a big sentence on the board and have him go up and mark it, subject, noun, verb, adverb, adjective, article, adjective, preposition, object of the preposition, and so forth and so on. He understands what is an adverb exception, what is an inverted sentence. How many of you all know that? All right. Now then, if Jacob can go at age 9 from having his fingers on his chest and his eyes fixed and stationary to reading at a 5th grade level, why aren't we educating every child in the system? And how many of you would like to be Ann Sullivan? Then we have to change what we're doing. And the place to start is to change how we look at them. Don't look at them as if they're broken. Don't look at their wrinkles and crinkles and holes. Don't look at their size. Oh, I like this one because they're big, and I like that one because they're small. Ew, I don't want that one. He poops in his pants. Really? Clean it up. What would happen if we would work with the one who poops in his pants until he can physically understand and process what's going on? Then he wouldn't have to poop in his pants. But somebody has to be willing to clean up the poop while we're teaching them the poop in the pot. Correct? During this workshop, I want you to learn how to identify a student for their potential. I want you to change the way you look at your students, and I want you to think about your limbic hijack. What are you doing that's judging that child out of your control? What are you doing to judge that one, and that one, and that one, and that one? Why are we saying because this one's gifted, they're better? No, they're not. They're just different. So keep your seed and your pit. I want you to keep them handy throughout the rest of the workshop. We're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break now before I start the second part of the workshop, where I'm going to explain to you how is it that I ended up standing here before you, sharing with you